So I was talking to my husband the other day about this survivor's guilt that I have. You see, a lot of my female friends growing up did all the correct things. They did their best in school. They tried really, really hard. They got good grades, and they're incredibly smart people for the most part. And they got the prestigious professions, and they worked their butts off. And most of them at the age of 30 are not married. They don't have kids. And I was saying to my husband, like, I did all the wrong things. Like, I didn't try that hard in school. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like university either. And then after that, I just traveled around and tried a bunch of different projects and failed at a bunch of different projects. And hopped from job to job and, had a lot of fun along the way. But my high school wasn't recommending that as a path in life. I still somehow ended up where I am today, which is I have an amazing husband and my life is great. I'm not trying to be an Instagram influencer and say that like everything is perfect and I take private jets everywhere, but like I have an amazing husband and I'm 7 months pregnant and I have good friends, very thankful for my life. I'm very grateful. And I said to him, like, I just lucked into this and they did all the right things and they didn't get what I have. And he said to me, well, it wasn't all luck. You did do some things that were correct. And he was right. There was a ton of luck involved, but I did make a lot of the correct moves. And I want to share some of them today in this video. And so this video is aimed at young women or older women or elderly women, who knows? And it's about how to find a husband. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out there that I lean fairly traditional in terms of relationships. And so what that means is that I think men and women are different and we do well if we don't treat men like big, strong, hairy women. And we do well if we don't treat women like men with boobs. I think that getting to understand male-female interpersonal dynamics and learning how to treat your partner or husband makes everything a lot easier and a lot smoother. But this video is definitely aimed at the person who's more interested in the sort of trad lifestyle. Even if you're not, come along for the ride. Maybe you'll learn something. Maybe you'll have something to vehemently disagree with. And if you do, you can put that down in the comments. And if you like it, you can also put that down in the comments. I would love that. I personally consider myself spiritually trad. So that means I'm not like 100% Handmaid's Tale, let's go, women are baby machines. But what that does mean is mostly that I have sort of developed an internal model of male and female interpersonal dynamics. And I tend to treat men differently than women because men and women are different and we operate differently. So I'm going to talk about some examples. And most of them are going to be interactions that I have with my husband. And I'm doing that because when dating somebody, especially after the first dates, when you're actually in a relationship, you will probably start to treat them increasingly like a long-term partner. And so you can start implementing these things yourself. But I'll also give some tips on how to treat guys that you're initially dating, like in the first few dates. So I want to preface this by saying that I consider my husband the leader of the household. Like, I give him pretty much final say on every decision. Not in my day-to-day life. Like, I'm not calling him up asking him how to run my business, right? Like, we do have separate things going on. But for, like, big decisions, I tend to give him my opinion, and he listens to my opinion very thoroughly. Like, he genuinely respects my opinion and what I want. And then I let him make the decision. And now that's not in every single case. If I think like there's a life or death thing going on, I'm obviously going to take control. If I felt like I was being abused, I would not let this happen. And I think that's a big failure mode. In trad relationships, by the way, is that women who are kind of already too subservient try to employ trad rules to be even more subservient to a guy who just doesn't deserve them and they should leave. And that does happen sometimes. I once went on this date with this guy and we were about to grab lunch. And as we were walking down the road, I saw this really amazing busker. He was playing guitar and I play guitar and I was very impressed by him. So I just stood and watched for not very long, 30 seconds, something like that. And the guy sort of took my hand and led me to lunch. Like, he was deciding that this was over and it was lunchtime. And it just rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Like, we didn't have reservations. We weren't in a hurry. It was clear to me in that moment that he was not taking my interest into account. And this would be carried on into the future if I had a relationship with him. Because in a good relationship, you're both looking out for what the other one likes and trying to encourage, them to do more of that thing in general. Yeah, and I just let that little action inform my decision. And throughout the date, he kind of revealed himself as someone who I didn't want to be with at all, anywhere near, in fact. But I noticed the red flag and I kept my distance. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're keeping yourself safe, safety is always priority. But see what happens if you encourage him to lead. Look, I'm not going to cover this in too much depth because it deserves its own separate video, honestly. But ultimately, some of the best things I've done for my relationship are try not to criticize criticize. I remember one time I really screwed up. I went on this date with this guy who liked Magic the Gathering. I made fun of him for it, and I kind of just saw the light go out of his eyes, and I realized that it just wasn't my job to criticize someone's hobbies. If I wasn't interested in a guy who wanted to be into Magic the Gathering, I could have just called it off the next date. I didn't need to express that and put him down. I think we underestimate the value that men put on women's opinions, and kind of putting him down is like, it's very hurtful. If you have a boyfriend who plays a lot of Magic the Gathering and it's taking up $1,000 a month and he only makes $3,000 a month, you can be like, well, I'm worried about our personal finances here. I would love to have us on a similar page in terms of financial goals, and you can talk about that, right? But like telling him that he's wrong or projecting onto him, like telling him he's childish or something like that, it's not your place. It's unfortunate because I think a lot of women have not been taught how to do this. But somehow men, if you talk about your emotions instead of trying to tell men what to do, it seems to unlock a different side of men where they want to help and fix the problem and provide for you and be a leader and do the right thing, as opposed to telling them what to do, which is sort of a vie for power. It's a competitive thing. Like, I think competition and vying for power activates a different part of a man's mind. If your husband feels like he's being told what to do and you're sort of trying to take over and vying for power, I think it activates a sort of competitiveness in a lot of men's minds, and it doesn't really jive well with domestic bliss. And guess what? Men who don't see this as competition and don't try to actively fight against you become doormats. And I don't know about you, but I have no respect for a doormat. I don't respect a doormat at all. I mean, I've seen quite a few women in my life who unfortunately have kind of just mentally like beaten down their man. He just adopts this like yes honey attitude and just kind of goes along with whatever her plan is, and he ends up a shell of himself. He's not pursuing his dreams and his hobbies, and he's not alive all that much. He retreats into video games, or he'll retreat into some strange rabbit hole in the internet, or hopefully not, but some sort of affair, or he'll drink to excess or something like that. I don't know about you, but I just don't respect the guy who's a doormat. I don't want that relationship in my life. And yeah, he'll probably do what you say, kind of, but it's not happiness. And then I think ultimately most women don't respect that in a man. It's so much more thrilling for me to watch my man pursue some strange quest he's on at the time than it is to, like, even if it's not what I would think would be the best thing for him, in the realm of all possible circumstances. If he's pursuing some crazy hobby and just having a great time with it, like, that's way more fun for me. Spiritually also, don't underestimate feminine power. A lot of women have no idea that feminine power exists, and it's separate from masculine power. And by the way, feminine power is so hard to describe because I think masculine power is all in the world. It's very physical. It's very real, measurable, I guess. And feminine power is a lot about energy, the energy that you bring to a situation. And I kind of screwed this up today, so let me tell you about it. I was cooking. And I was cooking with my husband, and this was his cooking project. So he was cooking for an event coming up, and he'd volunteered to do it, and I was helping him, right? So this was kind of his project. So I was about to do something, and then he told me to do it a different way. And I thought he was micromanaging a bit. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do whatever way you want me to do it. And I did, but I didn't do it in an aligned way. Like, I did just let him have his way, but I didn't do it in a way that felt good for me. Like, I probably should have told him I was feeling resentful and a little bit angry because I wasn't being given enough agency in this project that I was doing, and either way would have been fine. It wasn't going to ruin the entire thing if I had gone with my way. I want to pause here because there's this common trope on the internet, on Reddit, that men should be taking care of 50% of the household, and if they're not even treading above the waterline. Like, they're failing, and they just owe this, and why should I be grateful that you're taking care of your own kids? There was this meme recently where this woman talked about how she's divorced with her husband, but she's so grateful that she doesn't have to thank him for doing basic tasks like being a good father, taking care of her kids. And it gets to me because it doesn't hurt to be thankful for someone. It doesn't hurt to express gratitude. Like, your man should be observing in you genuine thankfulness and genuine gratitude when he does things right. And listen, like, it's just like basic psychology. Like, if you train a dog, right? And I'm not saying men are like dogs, right? But if you're training a dog and every time the dog sits, you feed the dog, it's going to sit more. If every time the dog barks, you feed the dog, it's going to bark more, right? Like, you should be positively reinforcing things that you want to happen more in the world. It even works for dogs. Like, it's that simple, right? And so if you want a good, solid relationship, every time the guy does a little thing that is nice, that is caring, like, you can just be thankful and express thankfulness. And if you don't feel thankful, if you feel resentful, that's a different story. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Like, you should probably get that checked out. like you should probably probably work on that somehow, because like the resentment, it's a perfectly valid emotion to feel resentment. But these women saying like he only does 40% of the housework, and so, or 30% of the housework, and so why would I be thankful for that? That's like, it's resentment building. And if he feels like you're not grateful because he takes out the trash, why would he do the next thing? Why would he do the dishes? And I'm not saying you should lie. If you genuinely feel no gratitude and no thankfulness for something he's doing that you want done around the house, or you need done around the house, I mean, don't express an emotion that you don't feel, right? But I would really look into why you can't even find like a sliver of gratitude. Like, if he's taking out the trash and you don't feel a sliver of gratitude for that, there's a problem. Like, go do some counseling. Think deeply about why you're feeling so much resentment. And I'm not saying anything is your fault, but like, resentment is a real relationship killer. So it's much better to operating and lean towards the gratitude when you can. But you can apply this on dates too. Obviously, if he pays for your date, but like if he pulls the chair out for you, or if he gives you his jacket if you're cold, or whatever it is, you can just be thankful. Men are attracted to people who, I shouldn't say men, I should say healthy men, right? Because men are attracted to many different things, but a good aligned man is probably going to be attracted to a woman who appreciates when he goes out and tries to do something for her, and he'll want to do it again. I promise you. If you are grateful and you express delight in the nice little things he does, he'll want to do it again. And it's a positive cycle. It's a gift that you're giving back. If he's giving you a gift of coffee or dinner, you are giving him the gift back of being appreciative. Now let's move on to vetting. Vetting is one of the most important things that you will do when dating. Vetting is the art of separating the wheat from the chaff, the fuckboys from the marriageable men. Vetting is especially important if you are looking for a trad lifestyle, because if you are looking to make a man a leader of the household and give him a say over what you do in your life, you need to make sure he cares about you deeply and he listens to you and he makes decisions with you as a priority. So many women, I think, choose this trad lifestyle and they're already taking abuse, and then they try to be more trad. You can't do that. From the outset, find a good man who is worth giving power to. I cannot stress this enough. The next part is that when you're vetting, you have to learn to use your intuition. And it's really hard to tell you over the internet how to use your intuition, but I'll try to speed run it real quick. So first of all, there's this little voice in your head that's kind of telling you what you need to know. And it might be, you see a guy and he's great on paper and he has the right job and, he just has a good personality, but something isn't clicking. You're just not that into him. You don't think he'll actually be that good of a partner. You just have to listen. You have to listen to that. You have to. I personally think you just leave it at that. Just walk away. And there's nuance to it. And you have to do a lot of self-reflection here, because it's possible that if you were raised in a really chaotic household, you are attracted to people who are also very chaotic. And so part of your journey of learning to have an intuition that is workable is also kind of, going to therapy or reading self-help books, whatever it ends up being, talking to people who are good at these sort of things. I happen to have many friends who are very into the therapy and stuff like that. And so I can kind of talk about these things a lot. But learning to hone your intuition about other people is kind of very important for vetting. And look, if you don't have a good intuition, there are things you can do. You can take these people to meet people who do have a good intuition, who are good judges of character. If you come from a stable household, take them to meet your parent fairly early and really genuinely get a read of what your parents think of these people. If you're dating for marriage, they are marrying into your family, and so your parents should have a say. Maybe not should have a say, but your parents' opinion should be considered strongly. And now, if you come from a chaotic household, if your parents aren't trustworthy people, disregard what I said. Otherwise, make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who are honest and trustworthy and have your best intentions in mind, and try to get their opinion. I want to pause here because while I was recording, my husband came into the room and brought me surprise gnocchi that he had made. My husband brought me gnocchi. Very trad. My husband is delivering me food without me asking. Okay, so the next part of vetting is a little more practical. It's about listing what you want in a partner. I would keep this mostly values-based. So one thing is, does he want kids? You should be discussing that very early. My husband said he always talked about that on the first date when he was dating people. Doesn't need to be first date, but should be pretty early. And if he doesn't want kids, and you do, you need to get out of there. This isn't compatible, right? So does he want kids? Does he want a long-term relationship and marriage? Do you believe that he wants marriage is another part of this? Do you believe that he's actually ready to settle down? What does he think about ways to run a marriage? Does he think it's okay to have opposite gender friends? You should be agreeing on that. Does he want you to be a stay-at-home wife, or does he want you to work? You should be in agreement about that. Religious values. You should be religiously compatible. I personally vetted very heavily for honesty. So if I got a hint, a smidge of a lie from somebody, and this goes for many aspects of my life, I and cut them off. I do not need lies in my life. Like if somebody lies to me, I'm suddenly wondering what else they're lying about. Oh, when they said they liked that song that I played, were they lying about that? And I don't know about you, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if the reality that somebody conveys to me is actually real or if it's some figment of their imagination. If you don't respect me enough to tell me what reality is, you don't respect me enough for us to be in a relationship, whether that's friendship or a business relationship or a marriage. Full stop. And that goes for you too. You should be honest with the person you are going to marry. I don't think Elliot has ever lied to me, genuinely. I'm pretty sure I've never lied to him in our whole marriage. It's very nice. It adds a layer of stability. And if you want stability in your marriage, which maybe you don't, maybe you love chaos. So, I mean, that's your decision. But there's going to be enough chaos in life. You should probably have a foundation of stability in at least your communication if you can. Now, my final point is really think hard about what you're okay with him not having. Are you okay with him not making $100K a year? Can you live if he's not 6 foot tall? What if he's bald? All of these things I would strongly, strongly advise you to really think about hard, because 14% of men are 6 foot tall or higher. And if you have a great guy who's just super loving and intelligent and cares about you, and he's 5'8", you can make a beautiful, wonderful marriage, and he can be a fantastic father. And if you're screening out those men, you're really just screening out a lot of good guys. And I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but there are a lot of shallow characteristics that make dating much harder. And it's up to you whether you want to take on that challenge. The next thing I would recommend is to go on lots of dates. For a few years, between the ages of 22 and 25, I had gotten out of a long-term relationship, and I just went on so many first and second dates. And I had some fun dates and some very poor dates, and I just treated it like a numbers game. I was looking for a very specific guy. I was looking for a guy who was intelligent and honest, as I said, and just kind of fit my brand of weird, and that was going to be a challenge I knew from the beginning. So I treated it like a numbers game, and I went out to many events that I thought my future husband could be at, and I went on lots of dates, and I just put myself out there. And even if you're an introvert, you need to put yourself out there, because he's not going to knock on your door one day. I would recommend just going on dates once a week or more if you can. And can is a strange word, because it's really about what you want to prioritize. So if you're not going on many dates, are you prioritizing finding a husband? Speaking of dates, when you're dating, I shouldn't have to say this in this video, but I will. Think long and hard about dating for marriage and whether you are dating for marriage. Because if you are currently in a relationship where they kind of just go nowhere, they peter out after a few years, you don't want to commit, you're not ready yet, it's kind of a waste of time in my opinion, honestly. Relationships take up a lot of time and effort. And if you're not dating very seriously with the intent of marriage, what's the point? Okay, so let's talk about sex for a second. I'm not going to tell you when it is too early or too late to have sex. That's completely up to you. It's not my business here, right? What I will say is that I have some friends who have talked about having sex for what I would consider, honestly, the wrong reason. They've talked about having sex because, for instance, they wanted a guy to commit to them. They wanted a guy to like them more or something like that. And those aren't good reasons, because they're not aligned to your truth. You should never have sex with somebody expecting them to give you something in return. Sex is not tit for tat. And honestly, having sex because you think it will make someone commit to you is low-key manipulation. I don't think it's going to work most of the time, but you should be having sex because you want to, and because you feel chemistry with this person, or, because you feel it is the right thing to do right now and you feel comfortable doing it. Sex should never be part of the strategy that you use to get someone to do something. Other friends have told me that they had sex because they were lonely, and that sucks too. I think there ends up being a lot of regret around these kinds of decisions. And if there's not, good for you. I mean, go for it. But I would press you to examine why you're having sex with somebody in the first place. So are you doing it to escape an emotion? Are you really feeling lonely, or you want a self-esteem boost, or are you doing it because you love them and you trust them and you're genuinely wanting to go and take the next leap? And I'm not saying what you should do. This is all your decision, but it's a good idea to really examine, once again, your emotions around why this is happening. I don't think this is true in all cases, but I think that a lot of women, and men too, by the way, this is my kind of outlook on life, but I think sex is very profound and has a lot of impacts on people. We try to treat sex casually, but I don't think that's the best way to treat it. We should be treating sex as something that's very powerful, and not to be used as a tactic of manipulation for sure, but also not to be trifled with. I know a lot of people, both men and women, who after engaging in intimacy and sex with somebody suddenly develop these really strong feelings, sometimes for people that weren't very good for them. And it would have been better having not been done, but for some people it's very easy to become emotionally entangled. I'm not saying when you should or shouldn't do it, but just be very selective about, try to make sure that this this is really what you want. Try to listen to your conscience and let it tell you what's right for you. And lastly, let's talk about self-development. What are you doing to develop yourself? The ideal man isn't just going to walk in on with a dozen roses and propose to you. He's going to vet you too. Any guy who's worth his salt is looking for a wife who is going to support him and love him and be his life partner. So you should be working on yourself as well. And part of that is career. I'm not going to give you career advice. You can figure that out on your own. But I will say, adjacent to career is learning to manage money. And so having a budget is always a good idea. I think most men appreciate a woman who knows how to budget and doesn't overspend. And women also appreciate men who do that. Learning to invest even in basic things like index funds is fantastic. I mean, that's setting you up for a more stable and good life. Having more money is not going to hurt your chances in almost any situation. But also personal development. So like, do you have hobbies that you like? Are you working on those hobbies? Whatever they are, whether it's learning a language or knitting or soccer, whatever it is, are you putting time and effort into developing yourself? And lastly, just having social skills is super important. If your social skills aren't quite up to scratch, I would highly recommend working on them, because I can tell you that my social skills have gotten me very far in life. I find it pretty easy to make friends, and my friend is ultimately the person who introduced me to my husband. So if your social skills aren't good, I would just recommend reading up on it a lot. There's this great YouTube channel called Charisma on Command. I personally found this book called What Everybody is Saying very helpful. Not necessarily for conversational skills, but for reading other people and kind of seeing where they're at and making conversational directions from there. But there's a lot of YouTube channels, and I'm sure there's some really good books on social skills. So, just getting out there and practicing is a good idea as well. The more you get out and meet people and talk to people, better you can do. So try to learn to be a good conversationalist, because there's really no benefit to being a bad conversationalist. To add on to that if you are pursuing hobbies, it's always helpful to find hobbies that men enjoy. So I do jujitsu, and there's like tons of guys there. I mean, the female to male ratio is pretty good if you're single, but I'm sure there's lots of other hobbies that men enjoy. And like, what is the man that you want to be with enjoy? Is he doing charity work? Is he sporty? Is he an entrepreneur? Like, try to go to those events, even if you're not super interested. If you want a smart guy, maybe go to a chess club or like a rationality meeting or something. And trust me, if you go to one of these all male groups and you tell them that you don't know what's going on and you would like some help, they will jump in to help you. They will fight over themselves to help you. And it's very easy to start a conversation. So I highly recommend it. And there are some other factors about finding relationships. Men care a lot about beauty, and being fashionable and wearing makeup, I think, helps that. But that is not my department. As you might be able to tell. I met my husband when a good friend of mine said to me, you should meet this guy. He doesn't wear shoes. And we live in Australia, and not wearing shoes is a little more accepted, but I do not like to wear shoes. And I said, all right. So we drove down 2 hours to see him. And about 6 weeks later, I decided that he was the one for me. And we are now married happily with a baby on the way. So it worked out well. All right, husband hunters, that's enough for me today. Hope you enjoyed this video, and leave a comment down below with your thoughts and your actions. Let me know what you're doing. I want to see some results. All right. Have a good day.